What's up, everybody? Welcome back to I Came with Fire podcast. Tonight we are here with Jody Daniels. Hello, Joe. How are you?
Good, guys. How are you?
Pretty good. It's been a really weird week in our country.
It has indeed.
It has.
What
Up
makes it
until
weird,
actually this very moment, there's all kinds of stuff going on.
I feel like there's always something going on. They just want to keep us in a perpetual loop of nonsense.
Yeah, definitely.
Unfortunately. Yeah. Well, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of a explanation as well after you go ahead and say hello.
Sure. Well, Brandon, you and I have known each other for, I think, maybe 2 or 3 years through Instagram. And we hooked up, I don't remember exactly how, but it was because of our security forces background that we connected. And then over time, we just had more communication, especially this last year.
Definitely.
As so much stuff has been going on in the country. And for me, I'm a California guy. I was born in the Central Valley in Fresno, but I was raised here in Phoenix, where I live now. Although I did just move back after spending 26 years in California. As you know, I lived in Lodi, so just east of you in Fairfield. I lived there for 22 years, and I lived on the coast in the Pismo Beach area, central coast area, for 7 years before moving back
Beautiful.
here to take care of my mom. So yeah,
right.
And for me, I'm just the guy who's worked a lot of different careers and has different industries and has a lot of different stories and a lot of different experiences.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you actually kind of said what I wanted to say, is that over the past year, we've just definitely kind of linked up and become friends through Instagram. And, we share a lot in common, not just our Air Force experience, but a lot of the ways we think, the things we share with each other, all that stuff. And, you definitely have a very interesting background. And I know I've said before, I kind of see you as sort of a Renaissance man of sorts.
Yeah.
Even now, you're trying to go back to school to finish a degree, and that's not something a lot of people would do at this point in their life. So
yeah,
that's resonates a lot with me, because I'm always changing, always trying to change up what I do, adapting to different things. And I just always had a hard time sitting still. I've always been in school, started another master's program, like just always doing crap. So
yeah, that's great.
Me, man. Yeah. And but I'm happy to have you on tonight. And
thanks, guys.
Who kind
Appreciate
of
it.
knows where this conversation is going to go? I know we're going to talk about a lot of squirrely stuff. So
Yeah. Excellent. Good.
For sure.
You're definitely like a Renaissance man, because I was reading through the email you sent us to kind of give us like your backstory, and there's so much going on in there. So like, you've definitely had a very interesting life. And one of these things you said, shh, don't talk about that. But guess what? Well, we're going to talk about it. So
That's a good jumping off point, Zach. Why don't you just go ahead and dive right in?
Sure. You want me to dive right into the shit don't talk about it? Just get that out of the way?
Might as well,
So
let the cat out of the bag.
Let's do it. I see here, Joe, you used to work for an OBGYN office, right?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Where did you work? Like, when was this? Where and when?
This was 12 years ago.
Okay.
Brandon, you might appreciate this, Brandon, just because of the area that we both live in there, in that area along Highway 12, Fairfield to the Central Valley, right there. Employment is kind of iffy in the small areas of Lodi and Stockton, so usually you have to go to the larger city areas, whether it's Sacramento or you got to commute to San Francisco or do whatever. I was in positions where I had to take jobs that kept me close to home. And this was an opportunity because I had spent a little time in the supplement business to manage a medical practice. And this particular doctor was winding down the OB side, which is birthing babies, and still sticking with general health, GYN, and surgeries, and then all kinds of others. So we did just about everything there was except getting into the birthing aspects of it. So I did that for 6 years, ran the office. It was just a small office, about 4 of us that were in there. But we did a lot of surgeries over that time, and I had opportunities, and my email, I jokingly said, "Shh, don't talk about it," because it, of course, is not. It's not California compliant as far as the medical board is
There's a
concerned in
lot of
California.
things
But
that are California compliant that are just normal
That's a good
America.
point.
that's
So.
exactly right. Yeah, exactly. We did a lot of actual cosmetic surgeries, and one of the reasons was because a lot of the physician that I worked for, a lot of his patients after giving birth would come back to him and say, "Hey, I got sagging skin. I've got this.
Mhm.
Can you take care of this for me?" So he went through training and obtained the ability surgically. He was gifted with his hands anyway, gifted with the knife. And I had an opportunity to assist in a lot of those, whether they were facelifts, whether they were certain general surgery procedures, liposuction, excess skin removal, things like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Uh, Seemingly so. This, besides the other career I know you want to talk about, that tended to be on the bloody side. So it
Mhm.
was very, very fascinating to learn about the mechanics, learn more in depth the mechanics of the body, uh, and actually being a part of an actual these live surgeries, being actually in there, not under scary circumstances. I mean, this isn't like open heart surgery or even removing a gallbladder or anything like that. This is just simple, what you would call surface surgery, but it's blood and guts, nevertheless.
Mhm.
None of it was under general anesthesia. It was always what's called twilight procedures. So they're kind of sleepy, kind of awake, and no
Interesting.
real no real experiences, no real troubles. We did have one patient I know that was what you would call a bleeder. He just was excessively bleeding after a facelift, an S incision facelift, which is cutting behind the ear, pulling the skin back here, and then
Mhm.
suturing behind the ear where a scar is not seen. And he had real problems, and it was something that we had to try to get him stabilized. It took about 48 hours to get him stabilized.
Wow.
But eventually
That.
he clotted and was okay. But it was kind of a scary experience. We had some experiences with I remember one older lady who was an older female patient who was probably in her late 60s and had original breast implants done in the 1970s. So these
Dang.
were some of the first types of silicone that were done.
OG,
And when
OG fake boobs.
yeah. She wanted them removed and I guess lack of a better word of putting it, updated.
Mm.
And
Temporary
New
you
new
models.
model.
truly, and this is the reason I vehemently don't like breast implants because of the safety aspect of them. Even when they're
Hmm.
saline water implants, there's just something about putting that foreign substance in the body that I just, at this point, especially in my life, I don't agree with. In her case, we literally had, because of the age of these things, which was 30, 35, 40 plus years,
Hmm.
they literally came out in pieces, in chunks.
Oh wow.
Because
That's wild.
once we exposed this, they were basically, it was all breaking apart when the air hit it. And so it was just a thorough cleaning job of breaking all of this up, which meant silicone was all over the place. It had to be evacuated. There were two of us assisting the doctor at that time because it was just completely not anticipated that that was going to happen. But it ended up being pretty messy, but
Let's say that
got it
sounds
all
like
cleaned.
cleaning. It sounds like cleaning the sand out of the floorboards of your
Yeah,
car after a day at the beach.
yeah. Yeah, literally. And I don't know if we had heard stories about the possibility of this happening before. It was the first time that he had ever encountered it, but he was very cool and collected under pressure. And as long as he had the extra hands there he needed, we were able to get her cleaned up and uh, completely evacuating that cavity of all the excrement material from those previous implants. And we got her placed with new saline implants and it was good to go. So, but it was that was one of the interesting experiences. Yeah,
For
definitely.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you, like I remember a point in my life realizing that men worked as like OBGYNs and performing like pelvic exams and stuff like that and thinking
Hmm.
like eh, the majority of these doctors are men. And I was like, how do you go through medical school and be like, this is what I'm gonna do? Like there has to be a point where other people look at you like, is that what you're trying to do? You're just trying to like look at chicks, and be down there. I have a
Yeah.
feeling that like that's some sort of like underlying stigma, but it has to be awkward being, I feel like at some point you have to either reconcile the awkwardness of being a guy doing that and then
Mm-hmm.
get to the point where you just say screw it. But I know so many women who are like, I don't want a guy doing that
Oh, yeah.
stuff, and prefer
More
women.
so today than it ever was 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And the specialty of OBGYN itself, I don't think it came into existence until maybe the 1970s at some point. Before then, it was just you were a general physician and you decided that that's what your focus was going to be on. And it's one of the highest malpractice insurance rates are with OBGYNs. There's another one that's actually higher than that. I can't remember which one it is. But
I'll
I feel
find
like,
cost of yeah, I know you'll look it up, Zach. I know that's what you do.
yeah,
Cost of doing business is very high. Overhead takes a lot of patience to make a typical OBGYN practice work. There's a lot of satisfaction about it, but you're right in that I think there are also more females in medical school than there ever was 50 years ago.
there
So
are, yeah.
that makes a huge difference.
Isn't it?
It's very long hours
Yeah,
because either you have a doctor covering for you or you're on
it's messy,
call, and yeah, you're up in the middle of the night. And in my
right?
case personally, my wife, at that time when I was still married, we did surrogacies.
Mm-hmm.
My
Oh,
wife
okay.
carried babies for another couple that could not conceive on
Mm-hmm.
their own, and she ended up carrying twins the first time for
Oh,
this
dang.
couple, and then about 6 years later, carried a single baby for them. So.
Mm.
In addition to my own son, I went through the birthing process with her in these situations with somebody else's children. So it was an
A little
interesting
strange.
dynamic going through that, but it also gave me a view of the birthing. Obviously, people that have multiple children, they go through this. Like I know you have you have two children, Brandon,
Mm-hmm.
and you got one on the way, Zach, right? Yep. There you
I
go.
do. I was muted because I don't want to hear the keyboard
It
clicks.
already has a
No.
mustache.
Yeah,
It does.
see,
Oh,
you're
Morgan,
after
because
my
it's
own
really
heart.
weird.
Yeah, I've had a mustache actually most of my life, so your mustache growing, I can completely appreciate.
Good.
It's the old Tom Selleck for us that grew up in the 70s and 80s.
The Hawaiian shirt and
That's it.
the dude booty shorts.
That's it. Which I'll come
Yeah.
back to that in a little bit when we talk about the Air Force. Um,
Before we get
but
too
I
far,
got a
though, there was it was so the number one was plastic surgeons for malpractice, and
malpractice.
Mm.
then it's OBGYNs, and
Yeah.
then orthopedics. So people who work with your
Yeah,
bones, extremities.
replacements of hips
Yeah.
and knee replacements and things like that. Yeah, they're all three very highly technical skills,
Yeah.
and
I feel
obviously,
like in the 60s and 70s, when you didn't really have an option, that I feel like the medical practice was probably just inundated with nothing but male doctors,
it
and
was.
the malpractice going on back then has to be like a bank robber working at a bank. Like you're
Yeah,
constantly surrounded by the thing you want and are going to do anything inappropriate to get like that.
yep,
I can't even imagine.
yeah, exactly. It was always a male physician, and you had female nurses, and
Right.
of course, back then in those days, they used to wear those funny nurses hats, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those traditions have slipped by the wayside. And believe it or
Nurse.
not, interestingly enough, there's still a shortage of nurses today. So
Yeah, it's true. Nurse, I
it's
need the
interesting.
room. I need you to go ahead and just head on out of here.
While I do my examination.
That's right.
Yeah.
Snap.
Yeah, exactly.
PPP,
But
apply.
great experiences. I kind of ran the business side of things. One of the greatest things about it, obviously, that's an interesting thing, is participating in surgeries. Probably one of the greatest thing though was actually gaining this general knowledge of medicine, because of the different patients that we would see with different ailments, whether they were hormone issues, um, internal organ type issues, pains. We had a few cancer patients here and there, even though he wasn't an oncologist. There were things that OBGYNs typically, they're general physicians as well. So females that will have an OBGYN, they're also their general practitioner. So there's always that general medical knowledge, those general medical issues that you'll see patients for. And that was great. Probably the greatest lesson that I've learned, which, from some of the posts that I do, because I'm a naturalist in the way of food and things we put on our skin and all these other things. The greatest thing that I learned is that with the human being, there is no one size fits all when it comes to medicine, when it comes to treatment, diagnosis, when it comes to drugs, when it comes to supplements. There are things that'll work for Zach that won't work for me, that'll work for you, and vice versa, and all the way around. And it takes experimentation, depending on what your diagnosis is, what you may be going through. It takes experimentation, because what works for that guy over there isn't going to necessarily work for you. So that was one of the biggest takeaways, is to have an open mind, which also applies to a lot of the things that I talk about, which is diet. So in the way of diet, if somebody wants to be vegan, that's great, but there are a great many people, such as myself, that we've got to be primarily on the meat side, or our bodies just don't function well. Everybody biologically is different.
Going to you're talking about how, like, with doctors, they need to kind of experiment a little bit and kind of figure out what works best with you. I think something that kind of sucks with modern medicine, or today's doctors in general, is they tend to focus so much on the symptoms, and they'll treat symptoms only, and they don't actually try to find or solve the root cause. They're like, oh, you're in pain? Well, here's ibuprofen forever. But that ibuprofen is going to mess up your liver, so here's pills to help your liver. But the liver is going to mess up your kidneys, so here's things for your kidneys. And then your kidneys are, and it just, next thing you know, you're on like 20 medications, when at the end of the day, they could have just been like, you're in pain because you have a broken leg, dummy. Let's fix that. Like, that's a very dumbed down.
It's a cascading.
Version. Yeah,
but it's a cascading effect. And like, I oftentimes would run into seniors that would have a drawer full or a tray full of medications that were prescribed to them by 4 different physicians. Nobody communicates with each other. Nobody's knowing what the one interaction of one drug has with the other. I mean, a lot of seniors, they'll take up to 10 different prescriptions for whatever, with a high blood pressure, and then they've got this, they've got that. All of these things have interactions with each other. In addition to, if you were just to take the medication on its own, what kind of contraindications what problems is it going to cause? And it's a scary thing. And to your point, Zach, you're exactly right. There's treatment of symptoms. Let's not figure out what's the best way to try to solve the problem overall, which a lot of times it should be just diet and lifestyle changes. And I've seen people completely cure themselves of diabetes, of all kinds of different ailments, just sleep, diet, reducing as much stress as possible, and getting away from a lot of processed foods and all these other things that are poisoning us. And I'm just a huge, huge proponent and believer in these things, to the point where medicine, for all intents and purposes, the entire healthcare system needs to be blown up and completely started new. And there are a lot of physicians out there that don't like what they do now. They've gone through medical school, and they get to the point where they're seeing 40 patients a day. They can't properly address what these people are feeling, what they need, and they get burnout. They're like, I'm done with this.
It's definitely a big, like, money's kind of scheme too. There's like way bigger things organizing the smaller things underneath. Because I recently was watching a video, it was a couple weeks ago, but it was talking about how there's this doctor, and he's like, I know my patient needs this specific medication or whatever. He's like, and I'll prescribe it to them. But if they go to the pharmacy and tell the pharmacy they have insurance, then the insurance is going to charge everyone involved like $200 for this medication. And I won't make I'll make very little. The insurance company's going to make a whole bunch. The the company that makes the medicine is going to make little. And then that patient's still going to pay like a $25 copay. But if that patient said, I don't have insurance, they would have just bought the medication at price, and price would have been $12. And I would have made more money off the $12 than I would have made on the insurance loop on the $25 copay. But legally, the doctor can't tell the patient, hey, tell them you don't have insurance, because then that's a breach of contract he has with the pharmaceutical companies.
Exactly.
So it's like a big
you hit it right
to
on.
add more things.
Mm-hmm.
for the pharmaceutical company to make money,
Yeah.
and it just ties everyone's hands. It's stupid.
Yeah. Healthcare is not a right. Healthcare is an option for people that
Definitely
need
not.
it. I think it should be used few and far between. I think if people really seriously just concentrated on, which is easier said than done, concentrating on their own health, concentrating on eating healthy, on exercising, on sleeping, all of these things that are talked about ad nauseum, but nobody does. And it's really bothersome, recognizing the fact that there are the familial aspects of the way people were raised. They had pie for breakfast in the morning. I mean, the degree
Same
of
it.
things that you come across in the way of processed foods and the way somebody eats because their mom and dad ate that way and because their brothers and sisters ate that way, and they continue that cycle through their own children, and it just steamrolls and steamrolls. And we've gotten away from this aspect. I know we're kind of going down a rabbit hole, but it's related to medicine.
That's good though.
Because
We like that.
food is this. It's all about food, and we've gotten away from where we were 100 years ago into this manufactured food process where all of these people that produce, all these companies that produce ingredients that go into all the crackers and the cookies and all of these goodies, they're all just like healthcare, just like Zach. Everybody's got a piece of the pie. High fructose corn syrup people do, the MSG people do, all of these different ingredients, they've all got a piece of the pie, and they all utilize these ingredients to hook the taste buds in and to hit that mind connection that gets you addicted to eating that food, when what you should be eating is just meat, what basically grows out of the ground, grows on trees. Forget everything else. And it's easier said than done because people utilize food for emotional reasons. They just
Emotional eaters. But the thing with that is as we've grown into a society in general as human beings, we outsource everything because it's become the mode to survive is outsourcing everything. Whether it's back in the day people going out hunting and bringing back food, or now you can go to a grocery store. And we've gotten so accustomed to outsourcing everything that people don't have a say in what is presented to them as whatever they've asked for. So you have that, the grocery store, the food's there, outsourcing education for your children, so now you have these wackos at these elementary schools or wherever trying to essentially deprogram your kid from the stuff that you're trying to teach them at home, which is just weird and creepy in general, that somebody's trying to program your child. They have them for hours out of the day. So it's an outsourcing thing, and people aren't used to taking care of themselves anymore. People aren't used to having that responsibility that you're supposed to have over your own life. And unfortunately, and fortunately, right? Because I'd never say that things aren't. It's not a miracle, or it is a miracle that we have things like.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
sorry.
It's a
That's
miracle
it
that we
right there.
have things.
That's it right there.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's true. But, things like grocery stores are miracles, and things like indoor plumbing, that's all a miracle. But everything is outsourced. Nobody knows how to take care of themselves anymore. And I always joke that when the shit hits the fan, there's going to be a lot of dead people out there. And there's going to be a lot of people that go after everybody else because they don't have these basic human skills.
That's right.
And the unfortunate thing about having a society as advanced as us is all of these things that we had to do to survive that made us into the humans we are today, they've fallen away because we don't need them anymore on this level. And so it's outsourcing. You go look in Europe, half the stuff that we eat, like the things on this freaking memes act like Twinkies. There's crap in those that's not even legal to sell in Europe.
That's in Europe. That's exactly right.
And that's
after a nuclear
I always
Holocaust,
see these people.
Twinkies will still be here.
That's right. That's what
the
they've always said.
The zombie Holocaust too.
Yeah.
Yep.
But no, you see these people that go online. They're like, oh, I've moved from the United States to Europe, and when I was in the United States, I avoided bread, I avoided cheese, I avoided all these things that are fat, and was just eating veggies and yada 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 yada. And all I eat here is meat and bread and cheese and wine, and I feel great. I've lost weight. A lot of these issues have are gone because it's mostly natural food over there. And
exactly.
It's crazy to think that you can go eat cheese and butter, like real butter and bread, and lose weight, but it happens. And it's so funny. There's a picture of I see another meme. It's Kevin James from like King of Queens. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
And it was like this at this point, like 20 years ago, this was the most obese that somebody would be like on TV or whatever, and that was like supposed to be huge. And now he's like the regular guy at the grocery store. And you know, I've lived in Europe a lot of my life. You just don't see people that big, and there are, but it's definitely nowhere near as prominent at all.
Yeah.
And you know, talking to a lot of the European counterparts I've had over time, they're shocked to see the stuff that Americans eat all the time. They're like, why do you eat that? That's so fake. It's so bad for you. It is, yeah.
You're right.
And it's just nuts, man. Like we have no control over everything because we've let other people make our decisions for us.
Right, which makes us extremely vulnerable. There's another person that you guys will probably know, an actor by the name of Ethan Suplee. He played. He's been in a lot of the football movies. The real heavy-set guy. I can't remember the name of the movies. He was in that TV show. They Call Me Earl, I think was the name of it.
I know the TV show you're talking about.
Yeah, and he was the sidekick of I can't remember. Anyway, he's gone through rapid weight loss. He was 375, maybe close to 400 pounds, and you see him. He was always cast as lineman in some of these team football movies that were because he was so big.
Yeah.
Now you look at him, and the only thing wrong with him is this sagging skin that he could hopefully have surgically taken care of because the skin has been stretched so much. He's just a beast.
Is this the guy that was in Remember the Titans?
Yes, I think
yes.
That's one of the movies that he was in.
About.
Yes.
Yep.
Ethan Suplee.
Yeah, dude's roided out now. He's not actually on
he's
roids,
just amazing.
Yeah.
And he, I mean, you know, appearance and all that, which is something we can go into. There's aesthetics, that's one thing. But in his case, when physicians told him he was going to die unless he changed his life, he was one of the smart ones. He's not River Phoenix. He's not one of these other ones that's just going to burn out and die. He decided to change himself. And when you put that kind of transformation on social media for people to see, it's inspirational. It really is. And I like to see these things snowball. The healthy aspects and what people they'll look at what they're eating. They'll go through their kitchen cabinets and they'll just start shoving everything in the trash, and they'll start afresh. And it takes a long time for the body to adapt to these types of changes. But holy smokes, is it ever worth it? And people have always said this to me because I just turned 59. In my case, there he is. That's him. Just amazing.
Awesome.
Just an amazing dude. In my case, people said, you know, you're going to die. You might as well enjoy yourself. No, because I've had too many family members who suffered with so many debilitating diseases and chronic illnesses when they got into their 60s, 70s, and 80s that I just said to myself, I'm not going to be that way. I'm not going to be like my dad who died of heart failure. I'm not going to have diabetes that runs in my family. I'm not going to get close to any of that because I want to have quality of life. Because as a famous strength coach by the name of Dan John, which a lot of people will know that name, he says, I want to be able to dance at my granddaughter's wedding. Taking care of himself so he can remain and get into those later stages of life where he can enjoy life and not have to worry about all the aches and pains because he treated his body like crap. Yeah. And that's really what it comes down to.
There was
and aesthetics are just kind of a byproduct of it, you know, if you like to exercise and all that.
Yeah, last Christmas there was like a really like neat like Christmas commercial that was going around for the holidays, and it was there's this older gentleman like in his like 70s or 80s, and he like he's like got a walker and he can't like lift anything, and so he decides he's, you know what, I'm gonna work out. So he starts lifting like 2-pound weights, 5-pound weights.
Yeah,
and everyone,
I remember
like,
this commercial.
The whole family's like thinking he's crazy and he's gone nuts.
Yeah.
And it was all just so at the end of like the next Christmas, he could pick up his granddaughter and help her put the star on top of the tree.
This is a beautiful commercial.
To do that. And it was about health. It was like, start small, build up, become healthy, enjoy life again. And that's what it's all about. Right. Just enjoy life.
Right.
Perfect message.
Yeah. And I live in this retirement area now,
They
which
didn't say
I'm
anything in
not
that commercial
retired.
too. It was all just
Yeah, it was all
cinematography.
exactly. That's exactly the message was in what was being displayed in front of us. It didn't
Yep.
have to be
Most
words,
powerful
and,
way.
and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just imagery is just powerful. I live in this retirement area. With people that are using walkers and all this other stuff, and it's hard for me because I see people that they didn't have to give this stuff up. They could have kept going to a playground. They could have kept playing, jumping, rolling, doing
Mm.
pull-ups, doing whatever it is to keep themselves in shape. But man, whatever it is that American life does to people when you get into the working age of, past college or wherever you're at in your 20s and you get family and you do these other things, all that stuff goes by the wayside. I understand because I've been there. I know there's only so much time, but
Mm-hmm.
once those kids get older and they're doing their own thing, they're playing sports, and you got a little bit of time for yourself, boy, I tell you what, set up a little area in your own garage, clean out that junk food, exercise, start eating clean, and it'll just make a world of difference in the way your body feels, the way your metabolism works. You're going to make yourself less susceptible to these chronic diseases that are so prevalent and that really, because of Western society, and this whole other discussion on the poisoning of society over the last well over 100 years with pesticides and everything else,
Mm.
um, you're gonna live longer, and that's what it's all about. But when you're in the process of living longer, you're gonna feel better, and
Yeah.
that's what it's all about.
I think it's
You
by
know?
design, though.
There's two main
Yeah.
things going on here. There's the American lifestyle. The older you get is a march toward more comfort. And the more money you make, the more comfort there is. And really what you're doing is you're sapping your life away from you by doing that.
Brilliant.
By getting comfortable, you're not doing things you would normally do. We have in my family, she's a great grandmother, but she gets down on the floor every day to put her shoes on so that she has to
Mm-hmm.
get down, tie
Right.
her shoes, and then stand up. And that's like the minimum that she does every day. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just having that motion and doing that and using those muscles and those groups that is helping her stay spry, the walking
Yeah.
around, all this stuff. And it doesn't take a lot of effort. And you and I, we take that for granted, getting down on the floor, putting your shoes on and standing back up. But
Mm-hmm.
it's those minimal effort sorts of things. And she does other things as well. But those things really help. And
Oh,
that
they do.
that march toward comfort that people have gotten into that mindset of is very Western, like you said. And the other thing here too is we've grown a culture in the United States where being overweight is glorified,
Mm-hmm.
and you have all these
It
people
has.
now where, and kind of like what I was saying with Kevin James, how he was kind of like the picture boy for obese, right, to make fun of in this show, King of Queens. But
Mm-hmm.
now it's become like normal. And I think we're all familiar with the singer Lizzo. She just got in trouble.
Yeah.
She got
Yep.
sued
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
she had that competition. It was like called like the Big Girls competition or something like that, where she took all these overweight dancers and they had a competition. And that was kind of the thing, is like, you're beautiful the way you are, and you can
Mm-hmm.
get on stage and you can do all these things that everybody else can do, which is total BS, because you can't just be in that condition and start doing some sort of crazy cardiovascular workout or dance. You're going to hurt yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the thing is she's massively overweight herself, right?
Yeah.
And then you have this culture essentially where she becomes the picture girl for the like obese bad bitch movement, right? And she starts losing weight. This was like maybe earlier this year,
Mm-hmm.
and she starts getting shamed for losing weight
Yeah.
because
How
she's
dare you
essentially been put
be
on this
better than us?
pedestal.
Or
Exactly.
Exactly.
How dare you? Exactly. You're
Yep.
supposed to be fat just like us. And there's
yeah,
this culture now where you're getting in trouble for getting better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
if
obviously she did a
I'm
lot of really
miserable, you have to
screwed
stay
up crap.
miserable.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what I think
Yeah,
a lot of that is the situation surrounding her. Is there's all these fat women that she's got around her doing these dances, whether
Yeah.
they're backup dancers, backup singers, detracting from her overweightness or whatever she's doing there, like
Mm-hmm.
subconsciously. Okay, they just see somebody successful and they know they're not happy in their body, no matter what they say, no matter how they act on camera. They're not happy with the way they look. So you get, like you said, Zach, it's just like this massive tear down of one another, you know. But
Yeah.
we have this culture in the United States where it's being overweight, it's being weak, all these things, they are now the thing that's praised, and the outlier has become being in shape, thinking for yourself, traditional values, all this stuff. And it all is just this crazy cycle of crap and the erosion of values. And yeah, anyway, before I rant.
It's by design, Brandon. A overweight populace that can't think for itself, is 100% reliable in everything you provide, cannot overthrow
makes us vulnerable.
They cannot overthrow
it makes us extremely vulnerable, as we found out somewhat with COVID in a lot of different ways with the lockdowns. Obviously, there's a lot behind that, but it's that vulnerability, like you were saying, Brandon. How many young kids today actually know how to hunt and fish? How many actually know how to shoot a weapon of some kind? Can go out and hunt for themselves, can go out and forage for themselves? Nobody does. I mean, there's a lot of youth today, they don't even want to drive.
And foraging is a scary thing. There's so many different types of plants that you can eat, and so many different types of plants that you can't, and they all look like one another.
This fruit looks, or this berry is nice and red and looks inviting.
That's the most trial by error thing ever in human history. Can we eat this? Nope.
And then they're burying whoever.
I've always said though, imagine it's like ancient humans, it's like your tribe or whatever, and there's just a dude who happens to be allergic to that thing, but he tests it, eats it, dies.
Dies. But it's totally edible.
We don't eat that, but it's like something we don't eat at all still to this day, but you could have had it like
the whole time.
Oh, it's like superfood and we've been missing out.
Who knows, dude? There's stranger things out there.
Yep. That's it. Good stuff. That was an excellent conversation on that. Excellent points. There's a lot of things that I hope with personal behavior, personal responsibility, I hope that changes. I don't know. It's tough with healthcare, with people's diets, what they eat, how they take care of themselves. I see it. I see both. I see people that are kind of on the extreme side. Maybe that's what I am, versus those that are just blah. They're just amoebas sitting on the couch, eating all the things, consuming all the things that were in that graphic that Zach put up.
I feel like crap.
Free choice,
TV
free will.
in my room, and I'm always can't sleep, but it's like, come on. I don't have.
When you take a look at your Instagram page, Jody, it seems to be a mission of yours. I feel like, on the outside looking in, to sort of push this message we're talking about, because there's a lot on there about taking responsibility and ownership for yourself. And there's a lot about fitness and nutrition. And I see you routinely put pictures up at the gym, and there's some older ones where you're with some younger people at the gym. And is that kind of one of the goals of you being on social media, and kind of how you post is to inspire, essentially, or show a blueprint on what to do to be healthy?
Yeah, that's part of it. I originally started at least that page because I've got another one that's just, and I haven't done much with it on the photography side. It's images kind of unrelated to that, just kind of to stand alone. But on my page, it's under my name. It really started out as a really gritty gym photography type of thing. Also, with emphasis on military issues. I mean, there were things that I would post that were military inspirational, supportive. I'm always recognizing Chappie every year, Chapman's death anniversary, Mustache March, things like that. I mean, there's all kinds of things that I just always have posted related to that military wise. On the gym end of things, I was part of a great gym on the coast in Grover Beach, California, gym by the name of Central Coast Barbell. And it was one of those gritty dungeon gyms that just was the perfect backdrop for the type of photography that I wanted to kind of shape and get images of. But the other thing on that was I liked getting close to the guys. I liked getting to know them, especially the young kids, because I could offer advice. I could do, not just life advice, but, strength training advice or whatever, for what it was worth. I mean, some guys will look at the old guy and they're like, what the hell does he know? But the camera allowed
Nothing.
that introduction to take place.
Mm.
And then as I moved, obviously I moved here, and that kind of ended.
Mm.
It really has kind of taken on that focus where especially on the reels or the Instagram story side, I'm reposting things like crazy. In fact, I just did one a little while ago that had to do with the chemicals that are put in shampoos and toothpastes and all these other things
Oh, really?
that are basically just poisoning us. And
Mm.
for me, for the last several years, I use coconut oil and baking powder. That's all I use. I had the
Damn.
cleanest bill of health I've ever received at the dentist. I've had 3 cavities in my life. I'm 59 years old, and those cavities occurred when I was 12 years old. So obviously, I've done something right. Now, to my point earlier, I've got excellent genetics, even though my dad died with no teeth at all, complete set of
Mm-hmm.
false teeth. So it wasn't from his side of the family. I've got a good biological makeup in the bacteria of my mouth that aids in just fighting off tooth decay of whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm a prolific brusher. I do everything right. But the concentration on healthy habits means really getting the message out that people, you really got to stop using all this mass-produced crap that these companies like Procter and Gamble and Dial and Lever and all these other companies, all this stuff I've got friends that have been banned, that have been shadow banned on
Yeah.
Instagram because of the stuff that they're throwing out there. I've got one guy that Brandon, I think you kind of are aware of. Angelo is his name, and he does a
Mm-hmm.
lot. He'll go into grocery stores and just do complete exposés, holding up ingredients and saying, "Look at all this," and he'll name off all of these ingredients on the back of a package, and he'll basically tell you exactly what all those things will do to you over a period of time if you keep consuming this stuff.
Yeah.
And I always try. I look at kind of what I do as just like you guys do. It's kind of, you're passing on the message to whoever. It's this neat spreading effect that social media has, where one person may
Mm-hmm.
not have seen it, but all of a sudden you send it, and hey, great, and then they repost it and it goes on to somebody else. And I
Mm-hmm.
love the spreading of the message for that kind of thing, because incrementally, things will change if you keep just, we're seeing good change in so many different areas right now, even though there's a onslaught of like you and I were texting the other day. We got 360 degrees of attack going all the way around us with all these
Mm-hmm.
different issues. And our health is kind of at the low end of that when you're talking about all the issues that we're
Right.
facing in the world. But
Well.
we've got to function metabolically clean in order to function on a daily level in the work that we do in our chosen careers and our chosen
Mm-hmm.
paths. And the cleaner you can live your life and the more natural you can live your life the way we used to 100 years ago, better off you're going to be. And that's what I try to post, in addition to the solid patriotic stuff that
Mm-hmm.
I try to post. It's kind of hit or miss with me, because on a scheduling basis, just because I'm so busy with some of these other things, that I don't post as much as I should, and I need to
Yeah.
be more disciplined on that, because I've got so much material that I can come across every day and repost,
Dude,
that it's just a matter of. And I know Trent Sigmiller's often talked about this. It's a big job just to keep up with all the
it
social
is,
media
man.
stuff.
I do. I post. I used to post across 4 different platforms,
Yeah.
and even now I've gotten rid of one of those platforms, which is TikTok. I don't use that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes hours out of my day to do this,
Yep.
and I stick with it all the time because it's beneficial. And like you said, you're building those networks. I've met so many cool people, and there's always somebody new coming up I get introduced
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
But I want
Yeah.
to say something, like you were talking about just a second ago about that 360 attack, right? Today, I noticed, and a lot of people did, there are certain creators from a certain demographic, I should say, that have gotten attacked, I guess you could call, but they're being silenced. That Meta is going after some of these like right wing leaning,
Mm-hmm.
American, like pro American, pro military pages, and just by nature of the podcast and the people that I kind of keep around, to see what's going
Right.
on, I
Yep.
see a lot of them have gotten dinged today. Some of them had accounts shut down, and there's one that you may not know. You may Jody, you might find her page interesting, you might not, but her name, she's super popular. Her name is Twitchy Witch, and there's a lot of stuff she says that I don't really agree with, but I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy her commentary on like religion. But
Mm-hmm.
even she got shut down today, which I thought was really, really weird because she doesn't say anything about this like pro America, pro military. It's all like very philosophical stuff.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
almost like Meta decided to draw blood today, go on the war path, because so many different accounts, even shout out, our guest who's been on a couple times, Aaron Love, got
Aaron.
dinged.
Yeah.
Aaron got
Yeah. I
dinged
saw
as
that on his
well.
post. Yep.
Right. And it's kind of surprising to me because I feel like Aaron is on kind of a crash course to get banned, because he's on there always talking about the difficult thing, always talking about things that
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of people want to talk about, and not even necessarily people
Right.
want to talk about things that platforms like Instagram and Facebook don't want you talking about.
Right.
And it's honestly maybe consider kind of maybe starting up on X, because there seems to be a little bit more freedom of speech going
Yeah.
on over there. But
Yep.
it's crazy. It was one side of the aisle, and I hate partisanship in general, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. But it's one side of the aisle, and it's the right wing side, the pro military, the pro America.
Yeah.
Those people got shut down today, and it wasn't just one or two. It was so many. Even one of them that I can't remember the name of them, but all they do is sell
It happens to
clothing.
big people too.
Well,
Yeah.
it does.
I mean,
But it's
obviously
like,
with Aaron.
yeah,
And I don't know. I'm wondering if Politics by Laura, if Laura got hit by that as well, because I know that's somebody that
I don't know.
has at least, I think, 100,000 followers of some kind.
Even
I don't
even
know.
one of the
talking-
clothing companies I saw today, that all they do is take uniforms from special operations veterans who are like decorated, and they turn them into like patches and stuff like that. They got shut down today, and they take all
Wow.
their proceeds and donate them to charity. Like,
Yeah.
what's the point?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Zach.
Well,
go ahead, man.
I had sent you that one yesterday on Denise Aguilar, who's from Stockton. She's in Stockton, California, and how they had shut her account down completely because of whatever this flag picture was. And I just bounced on that in a hurry and started spreading what her new account was so that people could still follow her.
Yeah,
And then this thing just seemed to snowball today. And then
It
just
did.
shortly before we came on, I saw Aaron's post, and I'm seeing all this other stuff. What the hell's going on? Yeah.
right, dropping the hammer.
Well, I was listening to the Sean Ryan show, and they had John Lovell on there, which I'm a real big fan of both of those people.
Yeah,
And John, they were both talking about how John Lovell specifically said that he can go to his analytics of his social media pages, and he can see the day that the algorithm went against him. So
Isn't that something?
He like
Really?
we were trending, we were going up and up and up, and then the day the algorithm switched, I dropped. Like no one saw me. I had like pushed stuff, and in there he's talking. So his wife, right, is got notifications on for his stuff for like YouTube, subscribes to him, all this type of stuff, and it doesn't even show up to her. Like that's his wife, and she's not getting like notification stuff.
Yeah.
I subscribe to him, and I still have to go to like my subscriptions, and then go to like his page
just to find his posts,
to see something,
to see what he's
new.
posted.
It won't come up in my. Here's what we think you should watch next. It won't. Other pages will. Dr. Disrespect will show up a million times. But like I can't get John Lovell to show up naturally in my feed.
Dude, you know what I think this is?
Well, I was just real quick. I was gonna. That's why like John Lovell and Sean Ryan, they're real big heavy into creating their own stuff. So like John Lovell has said that he wants to, in the next 5 years, to be completely off of like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and he now has his own thing. And I'm gonna promote him here for free.
Yeah.
But it's like the Warrior Poet
Please.
Society app, or like the warriorpoet.com. And so you'll have his app on your phone that you will hear his podcast, see his videos, see his content. It'll cost you like maybe $1 a month, $2 a month. But it's better than what you're paying for YouTube and stuff. But that's where you're headed. Yeah. You like in that podcast I was just listening to this week, Sean Ryan was saying that he thinks that like YouTube will be dead in the next 5 years, or it won't be as like huge as it is for like new users. It'll just be a conglomerate of like media was 10 years ago. The media is just going to take over YouTube. You're going to think you're watching some person that you like or that you follow, but it's not going to be them. It's going to be the media using them to push whatever it is they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it could go that way. I think because that's kind of what's happened to Facebook. Is Facebook is totally dead, and you go and talk
It's
to
like
the younger
no news on
generation
Facebook
now.
anymore.
There's not. Yeah, you're right.
It's all
But you go and
memes
talk to
and
the younger generation, they 100% think Facebook is for old people.
It's for old people.
They'll
Yeah.
tell you that, and it
for
really
Yeah.
is.
boomers.
If you go on there, I don't go on.
That's
there.
all. Yeah.
Our stuff
That's for
cross
me.
posts to Facebook, and I'm sorry if you follow us on Facebook, please jump onto
I
Instagram
do.
because you're going to see a lot more. Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you're old, but it's just it's crazy, but I think that's good that he's trying to start something new and move towards something like that, because that's effectively what's going to cause that change is when people start jumping ship and doing their own thing. But the powers that be, right, are going to put up a fight with that, and I think that's
Definitely.
kind of what you're seeing, right? Truth Social, I've never been on Truth Social, right? I never even tried because I just know, like, personally, to me, that's just going to be a massive echo chamber. I don't need it. I didn't have any interest in being on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw that the other day that they're shutting down. They're talking about shutting down. And it's just one of those things where there's going to be a fight. These big groups like Meta, right? YouTube is owned by Google.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to put up a fight, and they have.
Yeah.
They've censored people who are political, right? I mean, you can disagree with it or agree with it or whatever, but like Tulsi Gabbard was somebody who got really shut down by Google during the presidential debates last time.
I remember.
They made it hard for her to communicate to people. They took down the stuff that she was posting. They gave her no explanation as to why her stuff was gone. And so what's to stop them from doing it to everybody else? And they are. The little guys, we're not going to matter at all. So, there's going to be a fight. And I hope that they're successful in what they're doing. And thankfully, things like Rumble have kind of taken off. That's where Russell Brand is there in Rumble now. And he's kind of just become the wizard over there for sure on that platform.
Mm-hmm.
But man, to me, the fact that we're approaching this next presidential election cycle, I think that's what this is. I think that what they're doing is going onto these platforms and they're killing all these different sites that they've kind of essentially let thrive over this period of time, and they're getting rid of it so you can't see it as the closer we get to those this
we're
presidential
at the 1 year
elections.
mark right now.
That's right. That's exactly it. We're at the 1 year mark. And I think that's what's going on. I think that they're creating that echo chamber. They're narrowing down what you can see, and they all want it to be one side.
Mm-hmm.
And, we can have a conversation all day about how bad the right is and how bad the left is, because there's crap on both sides. But the media is truly run by the left. And it's so obvious. And and there's people that will try and tell you that's not true. They're full of shit. And I'm just going to say it right now.
Yeah.
It's 100% the truth. When today is just a prime example. It's Instagram. So it's a microcosm of what we're talking about. But at the end of the day, it's not, it's not the other half. So, you can't tell me that this isn't a concerted effort to take out conservative thought processes. It just isn't.
You can look at our previous episodes. We have episodes that won't cross certain lines that the algorithm doesn't like, and they will do well. We'll get 10,000 to 15,000 views.
You want to listen to freaking cattle mutilations or
and then you put in something in there about Israel, and that thing's gonna get like 500 views maybe. Not even. This thing here is a great conversation, and to the people listening to it, thank you. For the people watching us, thank you. You have to share it, like it, promote it, because the algorithm is fighting against you and it's fighting against us. But I know you said COVID, right, Joe? It happened. It's gonna know. We're now talking about algorithm.
We're talking about
it's
politics.
Gonna know. We're talking about politics. We're talking about health. We're talking about the pharmaceutical company. All these things
checking all the boxes.
We're checking all the boxes.
That's right. Yeah, checking all the boxes.
We're going to submit this for ad revenue. It's going to come back and say no with no reason.
Sorry.
We'll submit it again, and then they'll go nope, and then can't submit it the third time. So
that's it. I get, in talking about this, and I'm not a tech guy, so obviously this may be meaningless, but I go back to the early 1980s, and under Reagan, he deregulated a lot
Yeah.
of things, one of which was the phone companies. When
Mhm.
he deregulated that and broke up, well, not he directly, but as much as presidents are involved in that because of the monopolies that were in place at the time. And those monopolies, especially with the phone company, they were deemed necessary for national security purposes.
Mhm.
And that went back, I think, before World War II, possibly. But at any rate, AT&T and then through the Bell system, they had this control on everything. When that was deregulated and they were broken up, and all of a sudden you had every Tom, Dick, and Harry coming out of the woodwork offering long distance plans. Again,
Mhm.
this is the mid 1980s, so this is before you guys to a certain degree.
When I was
Brandon, you were
born.
born in '82, I think, right?
No, 87.
87. Okay,
Mhm.
I was
so it was around that
92.
time when you were born. 92 for you, Zach. It was like, oh my God, we can pick our own long distance plan. What? And it didn't matter that the local Bell system was the company that had all the wires and everything built in.
Mhm.
If you chose a long distance plan of XYZ to be
Mhm.
your long distance carrier on your phone, that's who you could use. And I've always kind of envisioned social media, to Zach's point, kind of being the same thing. Again, I'm not a tech guy, so I'm not speaking with any authority here, but that same thing where you just choose what you want to be, a part of, to the degree that it censors or doesn't censor or do whatever, or you create your own, and everybody can kind of talk to each other in this interconnected way without worry of recourse.
Mhm.
And God, that would be great, because COVID revealed so many things, so many faults in our system, in our belief system. It basically separated us, those that are willing to give up and those that are willing to fight.
Mhm.
And I think the interesting thing to make a correlation to that and what's happening right now with Israel is now we're suddenly finding out that those same people are the ones that are supporting Palestine and Hamas and
Oh yeah.
the rest of it. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, and I can say this with maybe with an air of confidence or with a certain braggadocious attitude. I'm not Jewish, but I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood in Phoenix. Uh, my next door neighbor was a Holocaust survivor, so I'm very, very sensitive to what's going on in Israel right now.
Mhm.
Uh, and I see this situation where a lot of Jewish people who are Democrats are starting to step away from that, going, "Oh, wait a minute. The guy that was my best friend is supporting Palestine? What?"
Mhm.
Keep
This
your
is a big
friends
thing. It's a
close
big
and your
reveal, the
enemies
same as
closer.
yeah, it's a big reveal. I know we just kind of jumped there, but it's a big
No.
reveal like COVID was.
Mhm.
What's going on right now in Israel is revealing that, and I can't thank you enough. I don't know, Brandon, how I never got turned on to Bari Weiss
Mhm.
and the Free Press. But once you pointed me in that direction, because I knew who she was from her years at the New York Times.
Mhm.
But my God, is she just hitting the mark? Obviously, she's Jewish, but
Well,
the
no, it's
things that she's
crazy.
coming out with is just amazing.
It is. What's even crazier about Barry Weiss is that she checks all of these boxes that the left side of the aisle would normally just support without question. She's a woman,
Yeah.
she's Jewish, and she's a lesbian, right? So
Mm-hmm.
she's ethnic, she's LGBT, and she's a
Mm-hmm.
woman, right? And
Mm-hmm.
yet she is now being ostracized for her opinion. So she kind of did exactly what you were just talking about, Zach. She
Mm-hmm.
created her own thing, the Free
Yep.
Press, because she used to write for, it was the New York Times,
The
I'm
New
pretty
York
sure.
Times.
And
Yeah.
when they started censoring a lot of what she was talking about and other people were talking about, she created the Free Press, and she
Mm-hmm.
goes to colleges now and she gives speeches and she talks about, the importance of free speech, and she talks about the importance of free thought specifically, and that these universities are meant to be the arena where ideas are battled and not echoed, to be echo chambers,
Right.
which is exactly what they are today. So I really like that you brought her up, because I think that and I don't agree with everything she says, and I don't agree with a lot of, some of the things that the guests
That's
she brings
fine.
on
Sure.
her podcast have to say. Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's my point.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Because if it's the truth, and if it's a good idea, right, or if it's a lie, then you let people figure it out, and you let people decide what they want to hear and what they don't want to hear. And if it's a lie, then you let it be killed by the truth. You don't
Right.
create narratives, you don't do things that engender distrust, and the all fathers around here telling us what we can and we can't do.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there's so many issues. People don't trust anything anymore. And
Yeah.
it's people like her, people like John Lowe, like you said, Zach. They're trying to do their own thing. More power to them. I hope it's successful. And
I do too.
unfortunately, I think that what we were just talking about today with like Meta and these creators is probably just the beginning.
Yeah. Free speech can't be killed. We're gonna get the word out one way or another, even if we have to bypass these control mechanisms that are in place electronically. It's the one thing I've always said.
Smoke signals.
Freedom, you can't kill freedom. Man, man, in other words, man and woman, human beings have this innate desire to be free, to say what we want, to go do what we want. Obviously, in an organized society, within reason, we obviously have laws in place to curtail certain behaviors. But this is who we are, and this is the brilliance of the United States of America and the Constitution, the rights, the inalienable God-given rights, whatever God you want to believe in, you have the right to these things. And the way speech was attacked, was restricted under COVID, the way people were shut down, and that extended into the presidential election, the whole Hunter Biden laptop thing, it just bam, 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 and to what's now occurring, to your point, 1 year out of the election, and here we are. The stuff is starting again. I really hope to see Elon Musk take whatever role he can, and not necessarily through X, but through his platform to really start pushing because he's obviously, to a lot of us, he's kind of seen as a savior per se in the technology world of the person that's going to tell the truth. Look at that.
That's a great graphic, Zach.
So like you have people who are just going to spin a narrative or whatever, and like you said, echo chambers. People. So we're showing a diagram for people who are just listening, and it's showing like an object in the middle and lights being shined from 3 different directions, but the shadow is a different object, and so those are all true, but then the truth is the actual object, right? So
that's brilliant.
What this is getting at is that you'll get people get echo chambers. So you have the person who only sees circle information, and they're hell-bent on that's it, there's nothing else, stop looking, blah, blah, blah. And then you get the square guy and the triangle guy, and they just fight each other over and over again. But if they just looked at each other's chambers, each other's echo chambers, or maybe just took a step back and thought about it, they would actually find the truth. And that is what's happening today, is the truth isn't as easy as what
that's great.
True.
So, well, even to take your graphic a step further, if you have 3 people, right, looking at the square, the circle, and the triangle, it requires communication. It requires civil communication in order to understand you're looking at this polygon or whatever the hell that is.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
It requires debate.
Yeah.
It requires conversation, and it requires perspective. You have to have and humility too. You have to understand it's possible. Absolutely. It's possible for the circle guy to go, yeah, you know what? The square is also true. I'm not all end all be all. That's
something that we've talked about a few times on this podcast, Zach. Like what you said is 2 things, 3 things, whatever, can be true at the same time. And you got to get out of that one-track mindset and understand that, again, 2 things can be true at the same time. And what does that mean when they're both true? And get to that place instead of focusing on fighting the person that is saying, no, it's a square, no, it's a circle, whatever. And I've seen this graphic before. I didn't even think about pulling it up. So I'm glad you did. It's a terrific way to look at it. It says a lot.
It is just brilliant.
That's why I've been kind of like the last couple episodes, I've said a couple times, and whenever you're trying to decide something or come to a conclusion, I think you should sit down and think, does this make me feel good, or does this actually do good? And I think if you're any of those specific shapes, you're thinking, well, this made me feel good because this is relating with me. And when you find the actual truth is when you realize what actually does good. So I think you should, every decision, you should think that through.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I learned about 3-dimensional thinking, believe it or not, from Star Trek. The original Star Trek was something Mr. Spock used to talk about. 2-dimensional thinking versus 3-dimensional thinking. The interesting thing is back in the 60s, they actually invented for Star Trek, it was just featured, I think, on one episode. It was a 3-level chessboard. that
I've
represented
seen the pictures of that.
three-dimensional thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what that reminds me of. And it's the analogy that you set aside your cognitive biases and
Mm-hmm.
you start to examine everything from every angle.
Mm-hmm.
And that graphic is telling. That's
It
brilliant.
is.
Brilliant stuff.
Before we get too far off the topic of like social media and free speech, this
Yeah.
is a debate I've had with somebody before, and I'm interested to get both of your perspectives. So the conversation is that things like Meta, so Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, right? They're all privately owned organizations and apps, platforms on the internet, right? And so the debate goes that since they're privately owned, then they have the right to say what goes on that platform. Kind of like the whole cake gay marriage debate thing that we're all very familiar with, where,
Mm.
you know, yeah, that they have the right to not bake a cake for anybody they don't want to bake a cake for, no matter what their reason is, because
Mhm.
nobody's labor is your right, right? But the conversation is, this is Meta, Facebook, and Instagram. These are privately owned, apps and platforms that you can post on within their guidelines, right?
Yeah.
And the debate goes into this gray area for me because it is true, it is privately owned, and therefore certain laws about free speech don't necessarily apply, and it's not an infringement on your right. But I think that line of thinking is ignoring the way the internet has changed and the way we communicate on it.
Hmm.
And I get it, it can be a very dangerous place because misinformation can cause a lot of chaos, and that's very evident in a lot of different things, right?
Yeah.
There's very, very, very many examples throughout history of this.
Yeah.
But there needs to be a conversation, I think, about free speech and the internet, even though all of it is essentially privately owned, right?
Hmm.
Because I think we've reached a point where they can't be trusted to essentially police what's on there, okay? But at the same time, how do you reconcile the dichotomy that exists between private ownership and rights? Does that make sense?
That
I'm interested
absolutely
to hear
makes
you
sense.
guys' perspectives.
I I gotta tell you, I'm I don't want to say baffled by it. It's a crazy juxtaposition because as much as I would love to say they can't do that,
Mm-hmm.
I have to hold to the standard, as you just brilliantly put, the baker who has the
Mm-hmm.
right to choose who he wants to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there is maybe I go back to the issue of communications and the telephone companies and what that was to all of us back then and the generations before me, and the equivalency now in what the internet is in
Mm-hmm.
social media and our way of communicating, and that there has to be a middle ground somewhere
Mm-hmm.
where there is not this degree of control, and that saying that sets aside what the congressional inquiries have already come up with, and that is all this collusion between the FBI and Meta and these other things that came about with
The Twitter
squelching
files.
speech, the Twitter files, and all these
Mm-hmm.
other things. So let's set that aside.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff that's got to be attacked as a separate issue, and that
Mm-hmm.
can't happen again. But of course,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of things going on right now that shouldn't be happening with the government. Um, there's got to be something, and I keep going back to deregulation in some way to say you want to go over here and do that because you like what they stand for, what they're not going to censor you, or like we were saying before, Zach, come up with your own program that integrates into this one big national database of social media. I don't know, but um, it's really tough. I mean, you start
Mm-hmm.
coming down to the screaming fire in a theater type of mentality,
Right.
and or type of scenario, and you got to say, all right, what's acceptable and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that we're there yet. And I don't know if it can be adequately put into the hands of politicians
Yeah.
to figure it out.
I would say this before. I know, Zach, you definitely have something to say, like, and I want to hear your thoughts. But I was going to
Yes.
say that there's no such thing as a solution to this, in my opinion. There's just trade offs. Does that make sense?
Yep.
That we're going to have to be okay with certain things to get to an outcome that is as ideal as possible, right? But anyway, Zach, go ahead. Sorry, man.
Yep.
So I'm pretty much like a constitutionalist. That's where I fall, like, politically. And so I'm all about, you're a private entity, you can do whatever the hell you want with it. Like, as long as it doesn't infringe on anyone else's rights, you can do whatever the hell you want with it, right? Or their individual liberties and stuff. So it's like, my thing with social medias is news agencies, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, they're also all private as well. There's really nothing that's stopping them from just, and they do this. You'll have two stories from like CNN or Fox. They are worded similarly, but they will lean completely different ways. And based off who's reading it and how they feel at that time, they'll take it completely out of context, or they'll whatever, right? So they do the same thing. Like you're saying, there's no like end all be all or like a solution. But these social media and the internet is echo chambers. You probably could pass a bill. It won't get passed, but you could pass a bill that says that, hey, your algorithm that is great at just keeping them in the loop, you have to give them the opposite of their loop 20% of the time. Like, it's mandated in the algorithm that they have, like, it doesn't need to be 50%, it doesn't need to be 100%. It has to be mandated or whatever, that they have to get the other perspective like 1/5 of the time. Now, do they scroll past it? Probably. Do they argue about it?
To it?
They might, right? But it'll just put in the terms and conditions. You want to use Facebook? Then you have to understand that 20% of your feed is going to be the complete opposite of what your normal echo chamber is. And that might remedy it, but it's never going to happen. It's not like an actual solution, because then you're going to get the people who are like,
it's a good first step.
It is a good first step.
It's a good point. And decades ago there used to exist what was called the equal, I think it was called the Equal Access Clause with the FCC, where another thing that Reagan deregulated and got rid of, and that's where you had the explosion of talk radio. And most of what we see now, which is what I always refer to as single-sided journalism. Before that, it had to be balanced. You had to have both sides of an opinion. I believe that the equal clause on a radio station, you basically had to divvy up in what you talked about. You had to have both sides, both points of view. Which you guys maybe remember the old point counterpoint thing that oftentimes was joked about on Saturday Night Live, and some of these, it was a real thing. They used to have that. PBS used to run a lot of shows like that where you had both sides of the NPR opinion on the subject.
The thing that's interesting with that, though, is if social media and the internet does become like it's the First Amendment, it's protected like wholeheartedly. The Facebook can't divvy up who can or can't say anything, all that type of stuff. And if it goes that way, well, then that proves that the Constitution is a true timeless document. And if the First Amendment can transcend generations and hundreds of years and new tech, then so can the Second Amendment. And that's where I think people like
muskets to 50 cows.
Yeah. Politicians aren't gonna, you know what I mean? Like, there's, you start opening Pandora's box, then there's things that they don't want happening that will go up. If the First Amendment protects your internet cell phone and your Facebook and your Twitter feed, then the Second Amendment also applies to my 249.
That's right.
Well, it's
I can go buy an
parchment.
I can go buy an F-18.
Yeah.
Have the money. I can go get it.
Zach owned the first ever civilian-owned F-18 pilot school.
Oh man.
A-10.
Yep.
I'm going A-10 all the way.
Oh, A-10.
Yeah, there you go. Warthog time. That's it. Got to hear the brat.
It's just a crazy dichotomy to me, because I'm like you, Zach, where it is private ownership, and you talk about having some sort of government regulation on 20% of your feed, right? Now you're getting into government reaching into private
Yeah,
business. And again,
it's
this dichotomy
so
exists where there's no solution, there's
Yeah.
only trade-offs. You
Trade-offs.
have to be
Yeah.
okay with a certain level of government involvement for there to be any sort of control, right? For there to be any sort of, solution.
I'm okay with a
Solution.
little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like in my mind, the whole purpose of the federal government is to ensure that people aren't invading my land and
Mm-hmm.
that I have the bare necessities to like safety, security, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
As long
Yeah, yeah.
as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are not infringed in any way, then the federal government's doing good. When they overdo that or under deliver,
Mhm.
is what I'm
And
like,
they
what
are.
are you doing
Yeah.
there? Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
Well, I kind of like what is going on X because Elon is trying a couple different things. I've seen it, like where something since he's taken over has been a thing, and then now it's not because people liked it or didn't like it. And one of those things is we've all seen the media police get on there and be like, "Oh, fact checker says this isn't true," right? Or it's only partially
independent
true.
fact checker.
Independent
Yeah.
fact checkers, right?
Independent.
Your blue haired
I
couch
hate those
potato
things.
liberal arts degree says that this is not true.
But before you go real quick, please hold. I hate those things because they'll be like, it's like that's false and here's why, and then like the explanation will be
Yeah.
like,
read it.
yeah, you read it and it's the same freaking thing, but it's like one word
It's
different.
just it's
It's
all
like,
BS.
are
It's
you
word
kidding
salad.
me?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
it's the
exactly.
same freaking whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, one thing that X is doing, right, is I'll get a notification and it'll say like this post that you like has now been updated with a like somebody's provided context or something like that is what it says. And it'll ask you to go and review essentially the note that somebody put on the post, right?
Mhm.
So like it'll say like somebody will write like something I will have liked and it'll say this is actually satire or whatever. And then it'll ask you to either say this actually was helpful or it wasn't, and it gives you several different categories to where you can say like why was this helpful. Well, it provided meaningful context or provided historical reference or it provided actual reference for you to research. Or you
Mhm.
can go on there and say this is actually not true. But if you go on like Instagram or something like that and you go and you look over something that's been independently fact checked, there's no option for you to go and say, hey, this is actually BS, or this is
Yeah.
why this was helpful, or this is why this wasn't helpful. And I like that he has added that piece because it does kind of give a little bit more of a communal say in what's on there
Definitely.
than it does than the other
there have
platform.
been times where I've like, it'll be like a Facebook video, like a reel or whatever, and then there'll
Mhm.
be a pop up that says that this is false. And the video will literally be like a cat running through like a
Mhm.
field, and the false thing will say like Hunter Biden did not have a laptop at it. And I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah.
those don't even relate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you'll get
Yeah.
this is a
Yeah.
sensitive video. Do you want to watch it? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. And then it's like a baby giraffe like frolicking through a field. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, what's wrong with
Yeah.
your algorithm? Like, what is going
Yeah.
on
Yeah,
here?
exactly.
Ugh, so
Yep.
frustrating.
But
Good
yeah,
stuff.
it's those little efforts like there, right? Like adding that option to go in and rate essentially the independent fact check or context provided, and it actually takes into
That's good.
consideration what people it is good because
Mhm.
it sort of makes it a little bit more of a democratic process.
Weird.
And it doesn't necessarily now like I've gotten notification like on X before that something that like I'll have commented on was removed, and it'll give you the reason why. And like the things that I've seen that have been removed like deserve to be removed because it's like somebody, it is actual like promoting like genocide
Yeah.
or whatever,
Yeah.
that has no place anywhere, right?
Right.
But I do like that, and that's what it's going to take. It's going to take more of an involvement in a hand from these private organizations like Meta, to do and regulate their own crap. And to me, it just says that the same thing that was happening over at X can't happen anymore. So now it's happening here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because Twitter used to be really that spot where all of these more intellectual political conversations happened, and not Instagram. And people have sort of moved away from that since Elon has taken over. So now, to
Mm-hmm.
me, this is the new flavor of the week. We're gonna go in here and we're gonna clean house and get rid of some of these things. And there is a lot less recourse on platforms like Instagram or TikTok, for example, right? If you lose your shit on TikTok, nobody's writing you back to tell you why. Or you're going to get an automated email 5 seconds after you click review that says, oops, sorry, fuck off. So,
yeah.
They're not making money off you anymore, and they're going to make money off the new account anyway, so they don't care if your account goes back to you or not.
I hope that we'll be in the position so that this constant Marxist ideology thinking that is pervasive in so many of these areas that we're talking about, to the degree that this can be put down, to the degree that it can be, that people's hearts and minds can be changed so that some of these changes that we're talking about can take place. I see more control, attempted control coming, which is the importance of this election that's coming up.
It's a scary one for me.
Yeah, well, I think for most people are, and you know, I going back decades for these things. I remember thinking the same thing as a kid in 1980 when things were so bad and Reagan was running against Carter. And I think I was 15 maybe at the time. But I remember thinking the same thing, that the stakes are so high, and the stakes were high because Soviet aggression was so big. Well, just extend that and say Marxist aggression. And obviously Reagan won, and everything that came out of that for the better as far as the United States is concerned. But what didn't die was this underlying Marxist ideology that had been pushed essentially since the 1950s and before, that took root. This is one of the reasons why Christopher Messina and how he talks about it. Those that didn't, I just thought his analogy was so brilliant. Those that chose and got the deferments, went to school, and then kept going to school. And I love what he describes as the professorial class. I just think that is so brilliant because the Marxist ideology stayed with those people. And at that age, in the late 70s, early 80s, when I was in my teen years, I just recognized these burned-in images in my brain of Vietnam, seeing these images on TV in the late 60s and the early 70s, and all the death and depravity that was being reported by Dan Rather and all these young journalists at the time. That stuff had a traumatic, or not a traumatic, but it had a dramatic effect on my thinking. And getting to that point where you know that these people that are, as he talks about the professorial class, they went through the 60s and got their advanced degrees in the 70s. And then into the 90s and the 2000s, they come roaring into place in all these positions of power in education, in media, in the courts, in government. All these areas are all these underlying Marxist believers, these baby boomer radicals that he so eloquently described. And I always knew that we were kind of headed this direction just instinctually from an organic and a genetic standpoint, not a genealogical, but just a generational shift that was going to take place with baby boomers because their numbers were so high, and because of the political belief, those underlying political belief systems that were in place. I always personally knew that this was bound to happen. What I did not anticipate is what most people obviously wouldn't, was the degree to which technology has influenced how this young generation is thinking. Where we thought, your generation, the millennial generation, was okay, they've been affected by this. I mean, it's nowhere near what is happening with Gen Z and whatever this next generation is.
They're on another
Gen
planet.
Y or whatever they're calling it.
I don't even know.
This electronic influence and this educational influence of brainwashing, and admittedly so, parents have been asleep at the wheel. Brandon, you know, I've talked about this. People were not involved in their school districts like they should have been. They were sending their kids off to these schools, and they'd come home for winter break and summer break, and all of a sudden, you know, your 22-year-old son Johnny is now a flaming Marxist.
Yeah.
Well, for the last 20 to 40-ish years, parents have not been raising their kids. They've been managing. They've been overseeing. Right. The people who've been raising their kids is the government through public school, and then teachers, through media, and then now like social media influencers. They're raising your kids.
Exactly.
You're just managing your child. You're not raising your kid.
Yeah. And I can attest to that simply because my generation, which I'm considered a tail end baby boomer, first term Gen Xer, I guess.
I think 65 is the last year.
I was born in 64, and 65 is, I was born at the end of 64. So we were the true TV generation. And that was the first form of, as innocent as the monkeys were, and Lost in Space, and, you know, all these I Dream of Jeannie and all these other shows that we grew up with as kids in the 70s, as innocent as they were, there was still this influencing that was taking place with color television, and then what started to take place after that, with as prevalent music becoming so prevalent in the 1970s with radio, and then compact discs and the expansion technology, and then the internet, and then everything explodes around that. Zach, you're exactly right. This is where, you know, we're obviously parents are in this ride also. They're sure they're working each day and the kids are going to school, but nobody is immune from this influence. We're all on our phones. We're all on our computers. All of these things are just a part of life now. And it still does not mean that we have to abdicate our position as parents, our responsibilities as parents to do what we're supposed to do. And it was one of the things, sacrificing and living in a small town of Lodi, which is 65,000 people. It's a very conservative town in nature. We chose to stay there because we wanted the best possible atmosphere for my son to grow up in. I didn't want to go to some of these other big city areas because that's where the jobs were. So I got behind in a lot of ways financially because I had to just do what I could do. But the school system was straight notch public school system, never a problem with it. And my son is a terrific kid, 25 years old. He's just a wonderful professional in what he does. And I'm grateful for the sacrifices that we made, but we paid attention to what was going on and tried not to let those influences, like Zach was describing, to affect our ability to parent.
There's too many parents today, and in most recent past, who are too wrapped up in their current livelihood and lifestyle and the status quo, that they are not willing to sacrifice their current livelihood for the betterment of their next generation, their kids, or for the betterment of the future of the United States. People, just Americans in general, are not realizing that, you have it great now, but your grandkids are not. And because you're not going to sit here and kind of take a little bit more of a hard path, you're just going to continue on the easy route, then the longer that this generation and the next continues on the easy path, the harder it's going to be for the ones after them.
Well, this
exactly.
This is two things, or a couple of things come to mind here. Unpack what you just said. Is you have it so great right now because of the actions of the people that came before you. Right? Things aren't going to stay this way. It requires work. And it brings to mind the analogy of the frog in the boiling pot of water. Okay? You're not going to get out in time, and it's going to be too freaking late, and you're going to boil. And that's the point where we're at right now. People don't realize that's going on. It is.
Inflation is high. Things are expensive. Can't find work.
Exactly.
And we're all just kind of like, well, that's it today. I'll just figure it out for now.
And that's it. It's complacency.
Get out of the freaking pot.
It's complacency. And you touched on something else I was just about to say. It is a failure to realize all of this stuff that you mentioned and talk about. But another problem is that cost of living now requires in a lot of instances, both parents to work. And again, outsourcing, having childcare, which is again a problem. Not enough of that going around. Not enough of it in general, let alone good childcare. Okay, unless you're lucky
Yeah.
enough to find a neighbor you trust. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to have both parents working, and this is something that is becoming the theme now, where if you want to have kids and you want to support the lifestyle and you want to afford your house, the groceries, all this other stuff, the prices are going up. Both of you have to work, and it's another reason why so many people in our generation, specifically Zach, and the newer ones, aren't having kids, and that's a
That's right.
problem. It is a problem.
That's
In a
right.
lot of different ways, it's a problem.
What's interesting
That's
about
exactly
that, though, is it's consumerism, which is leading to the inability to kind of like take a step away from this, right? And that's
It is.
by design. They want you to keep getting the next upgraded thing, the new thing, the new thing, the new thing.
I think about
right?
that every time I go into Costco and somebody's got just a cart full of,
Yeah.
my God, stuff it's got to weigh 500 pounds and pushing it
People,
down the aisle.
Costco is almost like a pun for corporate and capitalist America. It really is.
Yeah.
You go in there, it's like,
Yeah.
you know what? Yes, I do need this 15-pound bag of almonds.
Yeah. Yeah.
for who
Why
knows
the
what.
fuck? You know, I'm starting my own almond butter business.
Yeah,
Psych.
but-
No, I'm not.
But what I was getting
Yeah.
at there is, yes, you talk about how it's expensive and stuff, but let's look at what makes it expensive. What
Mhm.
today people think, oh, I need to live in like a 2,400 square foot home with like 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. I need
5
to have
TVs.
like 5 TVs. I need the newest
Yeah.
iPhone. I need a 2025 car. I need this land.
Mustache trimmer.
Mustache,
Yeah.
like all this crazy things. But if you just decided to, it's being known as like homesteading right now. If you just decided, I'm just gonna buy like an acre or two out in kind of the middle of nowhere. I'm gonna raise
Burn
some
it down ranch.
chickens. I'm gonna, cultivate my own plants, my own produce for me and my family. You're not gonna need the dual income home. You're not going to need the newest, biggest
right.
iPhone or the fastest internet or really internet at all. If you just removed a lot of this, this ridiculousness of just need the next thing, the newest thing, the newest
Yeah.
thing, the newest thing, and you just kind of took a step back, and honestly, what I think would be great for humanity is if we just technologically just like jumped back like 50 to 100 years and just started there, then I think
Yeah.
a lot of this would just get fixed. If you wouldn't need the dual income or crazy jobless type of stuff if you just had a decent, normal house with your family that you lived off the land, that you hunted. You talk about kids don't know how to hunt today. They don't know how to fish. They have never shot a gun. You can build your own community away from all this bullshit, and I promise you, you will have less anxiety, less depression, healthier lives, healthier family, way better thinking.
So everything that you just said, we've kind of referenced it a little bit in this conversation about walking away from the status quo and removing some of that power. It reminds me of something that used to happen in ancient Rome, and I looked it up, and I'm going to read this to you. It's called secessio plebis, right? It's plebeian secession, right? So seceding from something. So withdrawal of the commoners or secession of the plebes was an informal exercise of power by Rome's plebeian citizens, similar in concept to a general strike. During the secessio plebis, the plebes would abandon the city en masse in a protest immigration and leave the patrician order to themselves. Therefore, a secessio meant that all shops and workshops would shut down and commercial transactions would largely cease. And they would do that when they felt like their rights were being trampled on, when they couldn't afford things, people were getting monopolies a little too big for their britches, all this stuff. They would say, cool, fuck it, we're out, and would leave, and they would walk away. And essentially those people, the patricians, all the power they had was because people were coming to them for these outsourced things again, right? So what you're talking about, we kind of need a secession of the plebes here for this to kind of take some of that power back, which is kind of why I wanted to have Felix come on, the episode we just dropped this week from Troop, teaching people how to take their investing in their own hands and get some of that power back from the C-suite, right? But that's what it is what you're talking about, Zach, and you too,
Mhm.
Jody, is we need to take that power back by walking away from these systems. That's why they work.
Wholeheartedly agree.
And that's like I don't know, maybe I'm just a little bit crazy or something, but that's the future
No,
I
you're
want
not.
for like my
No,
family
you're
and
not.
stuff. Not Sumi, my wife.
You're
and
not
I,
the only one.
in our vision, in my mind, is that when we like 10, 15, 20-ish years from now, we're going to be in a position, and you have to plan for it. You know, we're going to have to sacrifice for it. We're going to give up some things, and we're going to work towards it. But I would love to have like a little community. Maybe Brandon's there. A couple other of my buddies are there.
Yeah.
And we're our own little
You're
community.
co-oping.
Yeah, co-oping.
Yeah.
We're our own little community, little homestead thing, and we all kind of have our unique trades. We pretty much make our
Leather
own
chaps.
town. Yeah, make our own little town, and
That's right.
we're just living
You
it.
can have a bigger mustache.
Yeah.
I tell you,
I would
and
love to
Zach, your
have
dad's
I would love to have my little tin can with a string over to Brandon's house. Brandon,
I already
There
know
you
how
go.
to play the harmonica, so we're good for campfires.
You're right
I want
out on the
want
front
a
porch.
zip line over to your porch.
Okay.
And your dad's a builder, Zach. So
Yeah.
you know you've got talent there. You can build this stuff up. I've got an Air Force buddy that moved to his family moved to Montana. They bought 10 acres.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And had an existing home. They built a second home for his kids. They built a barn. They're doing the whole thing off the grid, livestock, growing vegetables, homeschooling,
Yep.
everything.
And
right
what's
down
crazy
the line.
is even you can use today's technology to your benefit. You can set up your own solar array. You can set up your own hydropower plant. You can, like, today's technology doesn't need, like, I was joking when I said we can go back 50, 100 years and it'd be nice, but you can use today's technology to your betterment without having to be enveloped by the technology.
A slave to it. Yeah. Now my brother's got 40 acres east of Kingman off I-40 for sale right now, completely self-contained. He wants to downsize, and they're moving to Sholo, Arizona. But solar generator, water tank. It's completely self-contained, completely off the grid. And he's just trying to find a buyer for it. 40 acres for, I think it's he's got it for just a little less than 600,000. Trying to find that exact situation.
Yeah.
You could build a whole compound on 40 acres and never see the same people
you can make
days.
A commune of like mini container homes, and you just live together, and you're your own little society away from all the craziness. Just
it makes me think of, like clues when you're deployed.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
There you go.
Stacked container living. Yeah.
My great uncle Gary, he had his own little cabin in like North Idaho, and it has its own like water source, has its own power source. It's all completely off grid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna say exactly where it is because that's the place I'm going to when the zombie outbreak happens.
Yeah, no,
but,
don't. Secret.
Zombie breakout. Nice.
Yeah,
that's it. That's the place to go.
You could go up there and you just be off grid and self sufficient. Like, I know how to hunt. I'll go get a couple deer, a couple elk. There's a creek nearby full of fish. Like, well, I'll be fine. But like, that's kind of what I want.
I know there's a lot of city people. They'll go to an enclave, a vacation spot that's like that, where it's completely off the grid, and they can't sleep because it's so quiet. There is no electrical interference going on in the air. You know, everything that's going on around us from all of our none of that is present, and their bodies are so attuned to that when you get them in nature, they actually
freak out.
It takes them a while to adjust.
I can attest. A lot of people forget that we are still animals on this little blue dot, right? With animal things that we need to do. And a lot of health professionals say that it's good for you. They actually say that you should do it like monthly. You should just go stay a night or two, like in a tent in the middle of the woods, and just like no technology, no nothing. Just go reconnect with nature
camp
for like 24 hours. Reset your normal sleep pattern, reset it all, and then come back.
Andrew Huberman talks about that. I actually love his podcast. Yeah, I've heard him say that before. He talks about the benefits of sunlight first thing in the
Mhm.
morning, that red light that you get from them. If anybody listening, you've never listened to Andrew Huberman, highly recommend
He's
listening to his
brilliant.
podcast. He's absolutely brilliant. He's an actual doctor. It's not just somebody like me giving
Mhm.
you advice. But
Mhm.
to your point, Jody, when I was in Montana, I remember the first time I went camping up at Glacier National Park, and I remember like because when you're doing your thing during the day, making dinner, doing whatever, playing with my daughter at the time, there's noise. Everything is normal, right?
Yeah.
And then when it came time to wind down, I stopped the campfire, went to sleep, and I remember like, holy crap, like this is almost overwhelming,
Just
the amount
listen
of
to the
Yeah.
silence.
earth,
And
Yeah.
exactly, the bugs, the
Yep.
trees, all that. It was
the
almost
wind.
like, as weird, the wind, as weird as it sounds,
Exactly.
it was like heavy on my brain, and I had to get used to it to fall asleep, because it is, we're
Yeah.
so, and by the way, like, side topic, if you've never seen the stars out in the middle of nowhere, that
Oh.
You're
that
missing
will
out.
that will change your life. You are. And dude, and I'll say this too, man. We've talked about this a few times. I know this is a little sidebar, Zach, but we've talked about this a few times on the podcast about like where God came from and where man became, religious and all this stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
like the stoned ape theory with mushrooms and stuff. Dude, if you've never gone and looked at an uninterrupted with light pollution night sky, it is no mistake
Amazing.
about how and why early man, doing nothing else but existing, looked up all the time and sat there and talked about it, because it changes.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely immaculate, and
Mm.
like, just no wonder we looked up and came up with stories, and it
Mhm.
inspires that sense of awe. It's incredible. So
What
I just
what
Yeah.
needed to
makes
say
me
that.
feel sad right
No,
now
you're
is that there's got to be tens of millions, probably maybe even hundreds of millions
Mm-hmm.
of human beings on this planet who actually haven't seen a non-polluted clear night sky.
yeah.
There's
That's true.
probably hundreds of
Yeah.
millions of humans on this planet who don't even know what morning dew is.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when we were in Kenya, Zach, the sky
Like,
was amazing too.
oh, I wasted so many
Oh, I'm sure.
AAA batteries on my NVGs looking up at that sky.
Dude, and it's the
Yeah.
southern hemisphere too, so it's totally
Yeah.
different than what we were used to anyway.
It's
It was
funny. It's
amazing.
like,
But yeah.
we're saying like get away from technology, but I had an app when we were there on my phone, and it
Mhm.
Oh
would tell
yeah.
Yeah,
me
you could start spotting
it would
stars.
tell me, it'd be
Yeah.
like, hey, that's
Southern
Mars.
Cross.
Hey,
I love
there's
it.
that. And it was funny. So like look below you, be like, hey, Venus is like right below us. It's through the Earth right now. Like,
I know. That's
Yeah.
so. Sorry, Jody, you were gonna say something.
yeah.
No. I was just going to add to that. I lived in Flagstaff, north of here, 3 hours, for 7 years. That's where our family businesses were, and the observatory that's there, the Lowell Observatory, is where they discovered Pluto. So for what it's worth, it tells you how clear the sky is there, and that's where I
Okay.
had first experienced that as a kid,
Mhm.
but then later living there as an adult, and the beauty and the wind. You mentioned the wind, Zach.
Mm-hmm.
The wind whistling through pine trees. There's just
Mm-hmm.
nothing like
Yeah.
it.
So
No.
It's just
I grew
amazing,
up
and
in Western. Go
the
ahead.
stars are so clear. Looking up, you actually feel like I'm just gonna somebody find me a ladder. I want to
Yeah.
go. I want to go up there because you feel like it's so crystal clear that you can touch it. And to what you just said, the fact that there are people that have never been in an atmosphere where it was so clear and so quiet that they could just get lost in the
Yeah.
night sky. It's that's
Yeah.
sad.
I
It's
grew up
it's a
in
once in a
Western
lifetime
Washington.
experience.
I grew up in Western Washington, and it's like it rains all the time, right? And that's something I still miss to this day. I actually miss like thunderstorms, like just being in
Yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
rain. Like it was raining today, and I
Yeah.
was driving home, and I was like, "This feels like home." I just like this rain. I like this. Like, there's just so many
Yeah.
things.
Mm-hmm.
Just like
Uh,
growing up.
yeah. Are you? Do you live outside Phoenix, Joe? Where are you at in Arizona? You don't need. I don't need the
Yeah,
exact
live in
address,
the
but
East Valley,
okay.
which is in essence about 60 minutes from Central Phoenix.
Okay.
It's all one big city, obviously now,
Yeah.
but it's Gilbert, Arizona, so it's in the East Valley.
Mm.
That's where
Um,
That's where Natsumi and I would really like to go to next. So I'm still waiting for the Air Force to decide. But I would like to be at Luke Air Force Base, which is right there in
At
Phoenix.
Luke?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's where Marcus is stationed, and we're right down from the old Willie Air Force Base. We're about 2 miles away, which I did some TDY work there years ago. It was one of those old historic pilot training bases from World War II, and made it all the way through until the first BRAC closures in 91, 92, somewhere in there.
If I do
Now it's
end
a
up
nice
there,
civilian airport. But
I'm gonna come take you out to dinner. I'm gonna do it. We're gonna go on a little date.
oh man, yeah,
dude. If that happens, I'm going. Well, I'm gonna be there anyway.
You're gonna be
next
there.
year.
You're gonna be here in April.
I am.
We're all gonna
yeah.
get together. Yeah,
Let's do it,
dude. I want to go to Chris Bianco's restaurant. I want to go.
Oh man, yeah. World class pizza.
Mm-hmm. Dude, that's
Jeez.
me, man. Dude, for real. Like if you Zach. So now we're like totally getting off topic, but
that's fine.
Netflix has half the time on our podcast there's topics, but then there's just but
and then it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember the name of the show on Netflix, but they did a special on just pizza, and it's all these different episodes. Maybe you could look it up, Zach, just so I can name drop it. But the first episode is about Chris Bianco. And I was actually TY in San Antonio sitting in the hotel room watching this one night. And I was like, you know what? I fucking love pizza and I'm going to watch this. And so I did.
Chef's Table Pizza.
Chef's Table Pizza. Yeah.
Chris Bianco, season 1, episode 1.
If you've never watched that episode, so, go watch it. But I'm putting myself at risk here when I say that I'm sitting in this hotel room on this hotel bed, like starting to tear up listening to this guy talk about pizza.
Yeah.
But it's
a love affair.
It is, dude. The passion he has for that, and it's not just pizza. It's the way he was raised. It's the way he makes his dough. It's the tomatoes. It's the mozzarella. It's the way to bake it. Like all this stuff. It's crazy. And I know this sounds so dorky if you're just listening to it, and you have to watch this episode to really get the gist of what I'm getting at. But if you've ever had a passion, you can associate and understand. But just watching him. So I've said this. I have to go to his restaurant if I'm ever in Arizona. So
in Phoenix,
I'm going.
Yeah.
I'm going.
Yeah.
You ever had?
It's popular.
Mm-hmm. You ever had Domino's?
Oh, Domino's?
No, Domino's, a local place.
Domino's.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the one across the street from Pizza Hut.
Pizza chain. Man. Yeah. Domino's, it's family owned.
Domino's.
Dude, I actually like me some Domino's, dude. I really do
too.
It's one of those. It's one of those. Every Air Force base or every military post had a Domino's outside of it. So
yes,
tradition.
Well, there's one on Travis. There's a Domino's on Travis.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was like one of the only places I deployed to Curacao, and it was like one of the only like American-ish things that was there. But they would deliver to the main gate, so I would order Domino's and show up, and I'm like, "Hey, thanks."
Perfect.
Is that the deployment with your infamous video?
Yes, that is the deployment infamous video. It's also the deployment where some interesting things happened in a different country nearby that I'm not going to get into today. So.
Yeah.
You were in Curacao? Is that where you were?
Yeah, I was in Curacao.
Curacao. Okay.
I fell under Southcom, and we were working with the DEA. We technically didn't fall under the Air Force. It was weird. It was like they were DEA C-130s and a whole bunch of other stuff. Really cool.
Wow.
I'm not going to get into it now. I'm going to tease it.
Yeah.
You can listen to it in a different one. Brandon will take a note. Yeah. He'll ask me in some popcorn podcast episode.
Where's Jesse Carey?
I'll have to. Yeah, that too. Jesse Carey, where you at?
There you go. Yep, that's perfect.
Wow, Jody, thank you for real, man. Like this has probably been one of my favorite conversations. And if you've been listening to this podcast,
says that every time.
I say this all the time, but it's true. I can have more than one favorite. This really was. This was an awesome conversation.
This one did feel really down to earth, genuine.
It did.
And I've said this about Daniel. What was his name? The Tech P. What's his name? He wrote the book.
Oh,
come on, Dan Schilling.
Yes.
You're talking Dan?
Well, he's not.
So
TAC,
I was
he wasn't TAC P. He was
Yeah.
combat controller.
Combat
my
controller.
bad, Dan. Sorry for degrading
Yep.
you. So the the conversation I had with Dan Schillings reminded me a lot of my dad. You also, Joe, reminded me a lot of my dad. You actually look like
thank
him
you.
too. That's a term of
appreciate
endearment because I love my dad dearly. Let me find a goofy photo of my dad.
I appreciate that.
I'm gonna bring it up right now.
Yeah, I don't feel 59, but when I look back on it, like the stuff that I'd sent to you guys, all the things that I've done, it's
You look 25.
No shit, I look old as hell on this TV monitor, but
It's just
what
the
are you gonna
grainy
do?
camera.
It's the way it
That's
is.
It's the
I
grainy
guess.
camera.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say for everybody listening, wherever you listen to us or watch us, please go find us on the other platforms that you may not use and give us that follow or subscribe, or maybe change it up. If you watch or listen to us on Spotify, go and listen to us on YouTube one day. It really makes a difference. It helps us out. And I've said this before. If you send us a picture of you leaving us a 5-star rating and a rate, I will definitely shout you out on the page, and I would like to send you a free sticker. So, and I think I owe you free stickers, Jody. So I gotta do that too. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah. But yes,
Perfect.
please give us a follow, like, and subscribe wherever you're at. Zach, you gonna pull that picture up of your dad, or?
Facebook is not letting me log in because I haven't logged in on this computer in a certain amount of time. So sorry, I'm not gonna do it.
Okay. Okay.
To everyone listening, follow us on Instagram. I'm gonna get a picture of my dad, and we're gonna put it right next to a picture of you, Joe. And no one's gonna know the difference.
Oh, perfect.
It's exactly the same. So,
which one was our guest?
Now, okay. So, how old is your dad, Zach?
Let me do quick maths real quick. So, I'm 30. My brother Colin is 4 years younger than me, so he's 26. My dad's 30 years, so 56.
What year? I'm sorry, it broke up.
He's 56 years old. I suck at math.
56.
Yeah.
Okay, he's 56. And Brandon, I don't remember in all this time. What year did your dad join the Air Force?
My dad joined, I want to say, in 89 or 90. I was born when he joined. When I was born, he was selling cars, so I wasn't.
That's I've heard you say that. So it was right after that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and he retired, right?
He did. He retired.
Yeah.
Both my brother and sister were born in Virginia when my dad was at Langley Air Force Base. So they've known. I really don't remember much prior to our Air Force life, but that's all they know for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the 80s were good times. Sometime maybe we'll have to chat about that because there's
yes.
It was a very interesting time to add some context with a lot of the people that I'm connected with on Instagram, you guys, and a lot of others. Most of them, they don't, there's that time period there post-Vietnam that there wasn't much going on, but there was a lot going on politically and militarily from the Reagan buildups and so many things that were going on at that time. There's a lot of good stuff to flesh out in some of those experiences at that time. So
I think talking and listening about your time during that time will probably lead to some conversations about current times because there's a lot of parallels. Oh,
much so.
Looks like Zach.
Holy smokes!
Look at this dude. That's Joe.
Zach, you made a mistake. That's actually Jody. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Yes,
yeah,
exactly. It's I should have to send a picture of me with a goatee. It'll be
look at that because
to a T, so to speak.
Watch this too. Watch.
Yeah, there you go.
We're the same person.
Power to us. Hair's overrated.
Totally. Zach's got to grow it on his lip because he can't grow it on his head.
That's fair.
Yeah. Well, like I say, that's the Tom Selleck thing.
I don't need to see that.
What's that?
He said he grows it on his butt too. I said I don't need to see that.
Yeah, well, I can't grow it on my head, so I've got it. I've got it all right here.
Right.
So. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Good deal.
Thank you again for coming on, Jody. we'll definitely have you
Oh, it
back.
was fun.
We'll talk about your service, and we'll draw some parallels. See what's going on.
There's all kinds of things, but I love the
Absolutely.
stuff.
There's way more.
I loved what we.
I was gonna say there's
Oh
way
yeah,
more.
yeah,
To the listeners,
yeah.
Joe is such an interesting guy. I was going through this email he sent me, and I was like, "What the heck? He's lived like 10 lives." So we've got.
It's true, and we just started with his OBGYN experience, which is a first for this podcast.
With the physician stuff, but the stuff we talked about is actually more important. It's very germane today. Mm-hmm. So I to what's going on, and actually what's going on at this very moment that we're recording this.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope at least listeners can garner some awareness as to what's going on and the battles that we've got in front of us, just based on the things that we talked about. Because as we discussed earlier, we've got things going on all the way around us that we're being attacked on as a society, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about and flesh out. And
target-rich environment,
but there's got to be a tactical awareness and a strategic awareness on how to attack these things and take them head on, and awareness with the general public, because there's people out there that just still have their heads stuck in the ground,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen.
Okay, guys.
Thank you again. Another episode I Came With Fire podcast. We're out.
What's going on, Fire fans? I Came With Fire podcast is sponsored by Red Clover Coffee and Sheep's Clothing, LLC. Red Clover Coffee is a veteran-owned company with small batch roasted coffees, and they just happen to donate to some pretty awesome charities. Whether you're into specialty flavored coffees, single source coffees, or having a really cool coffee mug and some badass slaps, Red Clover has you covered. You can order ground, whole bean, or even coffee pods and get it all at 10% off your entire purchase using coupon code CAMEWITHFIRE. Again, that's 10% off your entire purchase using our coupon code CAMEWITHFIRE. I personally love their Blueberry Invasion and African Roast. That Blueberry Invasion hits the spot. Head over and get yourself some awesome coffee and support us by supporting our sponsor. I Came With Fire podcast is also sponsored by Sheep's Clothing, LLC. Sheep's Clothing, LLC is a unifying banner for all violent arts, disciplines, professions, and survivors of violent circumstances. Redefine violence. Both Zach and I being survivors of violent circumstances and LEOs in the military, we are especially excited to be able to offer you 10% off your entire purchase with coupon code FIRE10 at checkout. Whether you're looking for an awesome t-shirt, hats, slaps, flags, or MMA gear, they've got you covered. Me personally, I love my snapback with the leather patch surrounded by God's flannel. If you know, you know. That's coupon code FIRE10, FIRE10 at checkout for 10% off your entire purchase. Thank you all so much for supporting this podcast, and if you should feel compelled, treat yourself by supporting our sponsors as well. They truly make a difference for us. Now let's make a difference for them. See you on the next show.